let me start off by putting something to bed. As I come off here earlier, I was confronted by a British Channel 4 journalist who made the accusation that I'm not a journalist. So for you, darling, this first video is just to clear something up for you. Let me start off, once I get the video ready, by saying earlier I went for dinner and there were tables of lone soldiers. Can I tell you, first of all, how inspiring that is? It's inspiring to realise that young men are leaving their families from every corner of this globe. They're travelling here. They are travelling here for something far bigger than themselves or their families. Something that unites every single one of you. They're travelling here to defend their people and to defend their land. So, a bit about me. I am a journalist, an investigative journalist from Great Britain. I first travelled here in 2016 because I thought it would be ignorant of me to talk about issues that I have not experienced and know very little about. So I come here. I met some fabulous people, but we paid some young Arab Muslims to take us to a Fatah-controlled refugee camp in Bethlehem. Now, bearing in mind that I am probably vocally one of the most outspoken people against the Islamic ideology in Europe, I've faced 12 Osman warnings, they're government warnings for threats to life. There are 6 Muslims serving 30 years in prison for plans to murder me. I risked my life to go to a Palestinian Fatah-controlled refugee camp because I wanted to ask questions. When I went there, and I love the argument in the UK, or I love the argument when people confront me who are pro-Palestine, and I ask them, have you ever actually spoke to any 3rd or 4th generation refugees who either live in the state of Israel or live in any of these refugee camps? So I went there to ask questions. And as I walked around the camp, I asked, who's oppressing you? And I got on really well with this gentleman. He was a 4th generation refugee. And his words, never fund free Palestine. The money does not come to us, which surprised me, okay? And then I asked him, who is oppressing you? I expected him to say the state of Israel. What did he say? The Palestinian Authority. I said, why are the Palestinian Authority oppressing you? He then explained, as he took me round his estate, we had a lady who blew up a bus, he described her as a martyr. We had another man who had gone on a killing spree. And he explained that the Palestinian Authority pay anyone who leaves this camp and kills an Israeli, they get paid money for the rest of their life, which I never knew. I don't think many people in Britain understand this. I don't think the British public understand that our government just recognised a terrorist state that is governed by a Palestinian Authority who pay people to kill Israelis. Keir Starmer's So, as he explained this to me, I had no knowledge. And then I started looking into the Palestinian Authority. And when I looked into the Palestinian Authority, I found out that we fund them. British taxpayers' money funds the Palestinian Authority. And the gentleman corrected me. So I said to him, if a Muslim leaves this refugee camp and murders a Jew, then they get money for the rest of their life? And he said, murders an Israeli. I said, what do you mean? It doesn't have to be a Jew, it just has to be an Israeli. So that's pay to slay, and that shocked me. And on that trip, I asked lots of questions. I also met a young, beautiful Jewish girl who had been forcefully removed in 2005 from the Gaza Strip. She explained that her family had lived there for generations, and that her family did not want to leave, but they were dragged off of their land by the IDF, I guess at a time when your government was still trying to appease and negotiate with terrorists, thinking that if every Jew was removed from the Gaza Strip, and they had the Gaza Strip, it might stop the killing and the bloodshed. I think obviously now Israel and the world, well not the world because Britain don't, but America and Israel at least realise you cannot negotiate and the only language they understand is strength. But on that trip I asked lots of questions, and I come here to ask questions so that I could talk about these issues back home, so that I could relay a message back home, so that I could discuss these topics. It's exactly the same reason why I'm here now. I come here as a journalist. I hope many of you have watched so far the videos that we've churned out since we've been here. I hope that Channel 4 journalists who confronted me earlier, have you watched the videos? Could you learn a few things from watching these videos? And as I said, I'm going to play a little video. Now this video is just for the benefit of those who don't like to accept the fact that we are great journalists. Has sent shockwaves through Europe. I'm in Luton, my hometown. So I'm in Berlin. We're in Germany, and we've come to witness a women's march. We're in Birmingham. If any other journalists who drive up here, are you going to pull them over, ask them who they work for, check their company, tell them you want to see a pass? You've been cleared.
Indeed I have.
14 days, no food.
18 altogether.
18 days, no food. In May 2020, a story exploded onto the internet.
Who's the president of the European Union?
Not sure.
Do you know who the leader of the European Union is?
We launched a petition. This is the result. I don't know where to start. But look, one of them was coming to give a speech on the topic of free speech.
But the easiest way to close down the discussion, the debate about anything is to call people racist.
Stephen Yaxley Lennon is many things, a journalist isn't one of them.
So I think now we've established we are journalists. Not only are we journalists, but we're far better journalists than the mainstream. Can I just point out to the Channel 4 lady right now? We currently have 55,000 people watching us live. More people will watch our content that we produce than any of the mainstream media. You do not have the monopoly to lie to the public any longer. I feel embarrassed coming here as a British citizen because I know that my government have just betrayed every single one of you. They've betrayed your country and they've betrayed our people. Because if it was put to a public vote, the British public would never vote to recognise a terrorist Palestinian state. For 20 to 30 years, not just in Britain, across Europe, the public have been scared. The Jewish population in Europe is scared. The public have been scared into opening their mouth and telling the truth. The reason why? You come under attack. If you haven't seen, since I've been here, I'm coming under attack from establishment figures, establishment media. The public have been silenced through the accusation of racism or far right, and it has been successful. Fear is paralysing, and the entire British public was paralysed into speaking the truth. What you have witnessed, there's been a mass awakening since October 7th. I'd just like to point out as well, many people talk about October 8th Jews, yeah? There's been a massive awakening, not just in the Jewish community, but in our community. I understand Hamas. On the day after October 7th, I made a video. At this time, I was censored. I didn't have an X account. I was deplatformed off every single social media. I was invisible. I was walking along the beach and I made a video saying, Hamas are ISIS. They are the same group. Hamas's charter says the final day of judgment does not come till not every Zionist is dead. The argument that they keep putting about Zionism, till every Jew is dead. The reason why I understand who Hamas are, I'm born in Luton Town. In my hometown of Luton Town, which is 30 miles north of London. When I was born in 1982, there was one mosque. There's now 45. Al-Musradeen, white English are a minority in my hometown. I know what it's like to live as a minority. I know what it's like to live with a dominant, hostile, Islamic supremacist community. Al-Musradeen, who are a world-recognised, now prescribed terrorist organisation, their head office was in my hometown, on a road called Biscuit Mill. Omar Bakri, Abu Hamza were all based in my hometown. 60% of the British Muslims in jail for terrorism were ex-members of this organisation. I looked, as I stood on the kibbutz 2 days ago, and you can see Gaza Strip, so the community next door. To many, terrorism or jihad is something that's far away. Kids I went to school with have gone to jail for being members of ISIS. Kids I went to school with have died fighting in Syria for ISIS. The problem is not far away from you, but growing up for me, it was never far away from me either. So very early on, I understood who ISIS were. I understood what jihad was. What shocked me after October 7th, it wasn't what Hamas done. I know what they want to do. You know what they want to do. I know that your country is surrounded by jihad. I know that they would love to pillage and rape and murder their way through this beautiful nation. What shocked me was the response across the West. I guess it shocked all of you. By October... It took 50 years to for people to start denying the Holocaust. It took days for them to start denying October 7th. Now, as Israel faced the biggest attack, in days, they were celebrating in my capital city, in every single Western nation's capital city. I'd say that Israel has lost the propaganda war. Considering people say Israel or Jews are in control of the media, they're not doing a very good job, okay? Because literally the next day we saw in every Western capital city what you witnessed in our capital city, what I witnessed, and what the public witnessed, was the takeover of our capital city every Saturday for over a year. Hamas supporters, Hezbollah flags, ISIS flags, Hamas flags, slogans, dressed up, terrorist chants. The shocking thing was the government and the police's response, as literally they were given full reign of the capital city and laws were not enforced. We saw Hizb ut-Tahrir, who are now a prescribed terrorist organisation, calling for jihad, calling for Muslim armies. And when they called for Muslim armies and jihad, the Metropolitan Police Force put out a statement saying there are plenty different meanings of jihad. There may be, but not when it's from a terrorist organisation on the streets of London calling for jihad against the Jews. Now, as we witness this, which is why I want to come here today, the vocal minority have been given the voice. They've been supported by the BBC, they've been supported by the educated, they've been supported by politicians, and they've been supported by the media. I want to give you some hope, because I've had hope. I feel like I've been banging my head against a wall for a decade, trying to warn the British public about the dangers of jihad, about the dangers of Islamic supremacy. Something massive has happened in the last 18 months in Great Britain. I don't know if you've been following. I don't know if you've... If you watch British news, you would believe that the British hate the Jews. I wouldn't blame you. Yeah? You would believe that everyone in Britain is against Israel, and you would believe that everyone supports Palestine. That is because of the media portrayal. But 2 years ago we sat down, 15 of us, we had a vision that if you change the culture, you change the politics. Rather than trying to get hundreds of millions of pounds and start a political party, we wanted to give the British community and the British public back something we've lost. Something you have. You have something that brings you together. You have pride in who you are, you have your flag, you're all very patriotic. we lost that. We had lost that. And I'll give you a little explanation. I went to Poland in 2015 to attend their Independence Day. And when I stood there, 250,000 Poles, children on their shoulders, flags, flares, singing, celebrating. I stood at the front and I put my arms out and I felt something. As the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, I felt power. I felt power in them coming together, in the brotherhood, the sisterhood, in all of them understanding. And when I looked at Poland's history, they've always been outnumbered 40-1 in any battle. The biggest uprising with pitchforks to fight the Nazis happened in Warsaw. They lived under communism. They were wiped off the face of a map. They understand what it's like to fight for survival, as many of you do. They understand what it's like. And as I interviewed Polish people, they said, your older generation, they know who they are. Your younger generation, they are lost. And that is basically what's happening in Great Britain. We have been lost. We've lost our identity, we've lost our culture, and we've lost our spirit. And I was jealous. I left Poland jealous. And I'd never experienced that. And then we started with a vision. We got 15, whether you call them influencers, journalists, the people who have been attacked, and we've sat down and said, let's agree on 5 things. Let's not talk about what we disagree with, because we'll disagree on a lot. Let's talk about the fact that British culture is under threat. Free speech is under threat. Sexual exploitation and rape of our daughters from Islamic rape gangs is a risk. LGBTQ+ indoctrination in the education system. So we agreed on these points and said that if we all come together, with a click of a button, we can reach this country, we can reach the population, and we have a greater reach than any of the British media. So we had a vision. The vision was to have demonstrations, have celebrations, and focus on culture and identity, and give the public back a voice. We held our first demonstration. 30,000 people come on the 30th of June. On the 27th of July, I stood in Trafalgar Square in front of 100,000 people, and I felt the same as I felt in Poland, as the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. And as we give people back what they've had taken from them, we've had mass immigration come into our country, we've moved out of our towns and cities, we've cared about ourselves rather than our community, which is why I admire Israel, it's why I admire the lone soldiers, because they know there's something far bigger than them and their family. Well, there's something far bigger than us and our family, which is Great Britain. And I've heard for so long about when the British lion wakes up. And I've been banging my head thinking, when is this lion going to wake up? What is happening? And then, on the 13th of September, I don't know how many of you watched our event on the 13th of September. What I want you to know, and I spoke to a lady as I went to a restaurant the other day, and the lady said that she travelled from the United States of America. She was a Jewish lady. She travelled from the United States of America and flew back to the UK for this event, because it was that important to her. Yeah? She flew back and her friends got out the Star of David. There was 2 of them. And as they had felt alone. They'd felt on their own. And I don't blame them for feeling on their own, because you must feel under attack from every angle. Yeah? So they felt on their own. And as they walked through what would be millions of people on the streets of London, everyone was patting them on the back. Everyone was saying, we're with you. And she said that she realised at that point that they're not alone. That there's actually an army of British people who are willing to stand with them. So my message is simple. Do not believe the media. Do not believe Keir Starmer. The British public stand with the British Jews. We are not going to stand by silently and watch as British patriotic Jews are driven from their homeland. We will be standing side by side with them in this fight for their survival and their future in Great Britain. I know many of you would want them to come to Israel. We don't want them to leave Britain. Now, I want to rewind a little bit and tell you a story about a friend of mine called Yisrael Shalom. When I started the English Defence League in 2009, we were quite a boisterous organisation, okay? We were young men full of adrenaline who were not going to back down. We were fed up with seeing our communities raped, fed up with seeing our daughters raped, and we started an organisation where we come together. In 2010, I was contacted by a Jewish gentleman in London who appealed to me for help. he reached out and he said that he'd lost his driving licence. And since he lost his driving licence, he had to walk the streets in Newham, which is a predominantly Muslim community, as a visible Jew. And he started realising that people were spitting at him. They were attacking him. In fact, I'm going to show you now a quick interview that I'd done with Yisrael at the time. And do you know what I said to him? What I said to him is, because his house came under attack, he was attacked violently. And I said, Yisrael, let me bring 50 men. Let me wait in your house with 50 men. And the next time they attack your house, let us be there waiting. Yisrael didn't want that. He didn't want any violence. He was a calm, peaceful man. Let me show you an interview with him quickly now.
I'm now going to show you a video from 6 months ago. Yeah, just talk me through. Tell me the story.
Okay, well, about 5 years ago, I got rid of my car, and I became more prominent in the streets of Newham. And I started noticing people get out of things as they would pass me, or people were spitting very close to me in the streets. And after about a few months, I realised actually they're spitting at me. And I faced quite a lot of anger. I faced quite a lot of just aggression from various younger Muslims in the community, simply because I was a Jew, or rather a conspicuous Jew in the college. And one time I was cornered in the college. I was shoved into the corner, and I was made to justify the existence of Israel. Well, I've got post-traumatic stress disorder, and I experience a lot of panic attacks. Yeah. So it's, yeah.
You've been living under a barrage of abuse and threats and intimidation for years?
Yes, yeah, 5 years now, and you know, it's been coming up for 300 incidents of attacks on me and my home, and it probably wouldn't be so bad if I knew that, you know, maybe the authorities would have my back, but unfortunately they don't. I do think every morning, you know, I'm still here, and I go to bed at night. I live today, you know.
I've seen the image of your property. It's like Fort Knox now, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, my friends that, I had to stop my friends coming to the house because I couldn't guarantee their safety. So I never have friends at the house. I always meet my friends outside. I can't have family to live with me because it's too dangerous. I live in...
See, this is 2014 in the Borough of London.
2014, do you know what it's like to see a grown man brought to tears? Do you know how many families I meet that are brought to tears in Luton and towns like that? The reason why I'm showing you these videos, I want you to understand this is real life. This is not made... When I say in towns and cities like Luton, I'll just give you a bit of background from my hometown. The Luton Islamic Centre, which was the home of the Stockholm bomber, it was the home of the Westminster Bridge terrorist attacker, that used to be the synagogue, okay? There's no Jews left in Luton. Why are there no Jews left in Luton? Again, let me talk to you about my upbringing. I remember when I was about 12 years old, we were little shits, okay? We used to go out and get chases. We'd knock on people's doors, we'd be running around, causing trouble as kids. And I remember there was a Jewish covenant in the countryside in a place called Lily, on the outskirts of Luton, with all the Orthodox Jews. I didn't know anything about Jews. I was 12 years old. I remember I was down there with my friends. We were throwing things, and my friend started launching stuff at these men. And he's jumping up and down saying, my mum and dad, my mum would be so proud, my mum would be so proud. I looked at him, what do you mean your mum would be so proud? My mum would kill me. My mum would kill me if she knew we was out doing this. But we were kids. And he said, they're Jews, they're Jews. My friend was a Muslim, yeah? So that was my first experience understanding your mum would be proud because you're throwing things at someone who's a Jew. That's crazy, yeah? Then I went to high school, where it was a mixed school with many Muslims. I heard so many derogatory comments about Jews. So I experienced this, I listened to this. Then there were Jewish families remembering the Holocaust in Luton. When they were remembering the Holocaust in Luton, at the town hall, mobs of Muslims, part of Al-Mujahideen, the now proscribed terrorist organisation, turned up with megaphones and chased them into the town hall. I can still see it because there was little children with them that were crying. So I'd experienced in my upbringing, growing up, I didn't know any Jews because there's no Jews left. But I knew there was a lot of hatred for Jews. coming out of one community that I grew up with. Yeah? So when I started the English Defence League in 2009, when I started, I looked up to lots of people. One of them was Gert Wilders. I listened to Gert Wilders talk about Israel. I knew he lived on a kibbutz here. I listened to his stories. I listened to Robert Spencer. Many of you might know Robert Spencer. I listened to Pamela Geller. Okay? So these people helped shape my early views and my understanding. Not just on Israel. I listened to their views on Israel. I respected them. I listened to their views on Islam, on jihad. I learned a lot. Okay? But those early years shaped my view, and what I saw in Luton, which was clear anti-Jew hatred. And then I met a gentleman like Israel. You see what he done there? I'm about to show you now a trailer for the most important documentary that I never made. I'll tell you why I never made it. As a journalist, which I am a journalist, you obviously know there's a lot of criticism of me. There's a lot of accusations against me. I have to be 100% about everything I say. Because if I say something that's proven untrue, my credibility is gone. I fact check everything. I make sure everything I say in my documentaries is bulletproof. I worked, when Yisrael, you see what he predicted there in that interview? He predicted his death. Yisrael is now dead. Driven to death and persecuted to death on the streets of London by hostile, violent Muslims. I'll show you the promo now, which was for a documentary called Shalom. That was, his name was Yisrael Shalom. Let me just show you the promo. And this was 7 or 8 years ago that I made this.
We begin in France, where a surge in anti-Semitic violence and hate speech has members of the Jewish community there fearing for their safety. Many Jews living in France increasingly feel under threat.
Last year, there were more than 500 anti-Semitic offenses here, an increase of around 75%.
Once again, the Jewish community here says it feels like it's under siege.
Tonight, armed guards have been posted at synagogues throughout Germany for the start of Yom Kippur, the Jewish Day of Atonement.
Hate crimes against Jews have increased by nearly a third since 2010, according to the Home Affairs Select Committee report.
Anti-Semitism is once again on the rise
in Paris. There has been a surge in applications for assistance to emigrate to Israel. The agency estimates 5,000 will leave this year, the highest ever.
We're working on a new documentary. It's a new documentary that's going to be coming out soon. It's a documentary that's going to shock this country. I'm going to tell the story of a man who became my friend, a man who was persecuted to death in modern Britain. We have evidence, we have an investigation that shows medical reports, police reports, hundreds of attacks. The man that begged for help from politicians, begged for help from the mayor, all of his cries for help, majority of them ignored. We're going to investigate how widespread this problem is. You're going to witness footage from this man predicting his own death.
Until I get to Israel, but I mean, unfortunately, I come to terms with a little fact a few years ago, about 3.5 years ago, that I'm going to die soon in Newham because I'm a Jew. I had to do that in order to be able to live.
It's not fair. It's like, oh my God, this is absolutely true, and you just can't believe that it's happening, you know. If it's just unbelievable. And I get angry because they took him from us. I feel like they took him.
Yisrael Shalom wanted his story to be told. His family wants his story to be told.
I'm going to make sure the world knows the story of Israel.
For me, this is a very difficult conversation because I have failed Yisrael Shalom. I failed him because when he died, I got a phone call off his niece. I'd never met her. She said, "I've been told to contact you." She said, Yisrael's dead, but we have a note that says, upon his death, we need to contact Tommy Robinson and give him the keys to our house. So I took a camera and I went to his house, and she said, he said, "You'll know what to do." So I started filming as I walked into his house, where he had bulletproof vests. He used to wear a bulletproof vest to walk the streets of Newham. And then in his house, I found paperwork. He'd wrote to the Queen. He'd wrote to the Mayor of London. He'd wrote and begged everyone for help in dealing with the violence and attacks that he was facing as a Jew in our capital city of London. Do you know what the advice was back in some of the letters? The advice was move to a Jewish area. That's the advice. Imagine telling a black person to move to a black area if they were facing racism. But that advice to Yisrael Shalom was to move to a Jewish area. Now, why do I say I failed him? You see some of the organisations that are condemning me right now. That was 7 years ago I made that. I first sat down with Yisrael in 2010 when he called out for help. I first sat down and videoed that interview in 2014. That was before I was doing my journalism. Now, as I was making that documentary, I had the paperwork, the records. Yisrael was raped. He was taken off the streets. It sounds insane, no? He was taken off the streets and raped. And then I wondered how many more Yisrael Shaloms there are. How many more people are being targeted on their own in communities when they're living within a Muslim community? And then I found the story of a Jew in Paris, where 28 people were convicted for kidnapping him. They had him for 20 days. They tortured him. And they dumped his body and he died in Paris. So as I started looking into this problem and attempting to tell the story, one of the organisations which is condemning me right now for my interest in Israel or whether I'm a friend to the Jews, the 2 members of staff I had working for me, and I've done a documentary on this. I've exposed an organisation called Hope Not Hate. I've exposed them already. They paid my 2 employees who worked for me, who had every bit of documentation and evidence to do with this case, took that documentation and they didn't have it anymore. So my attempt to tell this story, and when I say my attempt to tell this story, for me to make a film and quote and say what's happened, I need the evidence. I literally need to show everyone every bit of paper along the way, because I know I'll get accusations of lies and smears, and if I get caught once on getting something wrong, it will discredit any future documentaries or work I'm doing. So I had to make a decision to fail that gentleman, to shelve that programme and shelve that show. Obviously, I made a documentary called Panodrama, where I exposed and showed. If any of you want to watch these films, you can watch them at trfilms.co.uk. But I showed that government organisations were paying my old 2 employees to discredit and prevent me showing the world the story of Yisrael Shalom. I failed him, I wish I didn't, but look how long ago that was. You saw what happened October 7th. It's been happening for years. This anti-Jew hatred is nothing new. It's nothing new at all. It's been happening for years, but I wanted to tell the story of Yisrael Shalom. I've never been able to do it in a doc. Do you know how much grief I got? Do you know how much grief I get for standing with Israel? Do you know how much grief I got from the far right? I get called far right, but from the actual far right, because one of the first documentaries I was making was called Shalom. I got uncontrollable assaults or attacks as I'm receiving still now. I'm being called a traitor right now because I'm stood here. Why am I stood here? I'm stood here because it's the right thing to do. Not because there's any benefit. I don't get benefit. I'm stood here because I've been to this country I come to this country in 2016. Do you know what? You do it a lot better than we do. As I was driving, I went to Bethlehem, I went to the Fatah-controlled refugee camp. On my way back, as we were driving, there was about 1,000 young Arab Muslim men. And they were racing donkeys. I said, stop the car, stop the car. And I had an I Love Israel t-shirt on. And I guess I'm a bit provocative at times. I thought I'm gonna walk over there and they're gonna go mad. Yeah, so I walked over with a camera. No one batted an eyelid. No one cared. And as I walked over there, I talked to them all. And Donald Trump had just been elected. In this election in 2016, people hated him. They still hate him. A lot of people hated him. And I asked the Arab Muslims, what do you think of Donald Trump? And they said, strong man, yes. I was like, they all liked him. And as I was there, I looked and there was a Jewish family having a picnic on the floor. Brian, you're nodding your head because you were there. Yeah? And I thank Brian and I thank Kay Wilson, Tao, and I thank them for introducing. I had a fabulous time with you. I found out a lot. But as this was happening, I saw a Jewish family having a picnic with their kippahs on. And I looked and thought, you couldn't do that in London. You couldn't have 1,000 young Arab Muslim men, Pakistanis, and a Jewish family who are visible as Jews having a picnic, and no one batting an eyelid. And then I went and approached Muslims, the 2 million of them who live in the state of Israel, and every one of them I asked, what's it like? I was on the Golan Heights, I was on the Golan Heights, and I said to some Muslim lad, because I was inquisitive, asking questions, I said, what's it like living in Israel? And he looked at me like an idiot. He went, that's great. I said, but what's it like? Are you discriminated against? And the bombs were going off in Syria at the time. And he looked at me and said, I pray 5 times a day. He said, you think I want to live over there? And he pointed. So I brought these messages back to tell these stories as well, which is what we're doing now with our journalism here. But as I go through this, as I've said, there is a mass awakening happening. Why am I hated as well? Why are the I'm not even giving them the credit and name in their name, but why are establishment organisations who are in bed with the Labour Party, why are they attacking me? Why have I faced so much criticism since the start of my activism? I started my activism in 2009. I formed an organisation called the English Defence League. The English Defence League had a Hindu division, a Jewish division, a lesbian and gay division. At every single demonstration we held, a non-white person spoke and a gay person spoke. And the non-white person spoke and a gay person spoke to let the far right know, to let the Nazis know, this is not a movement for you. I'm from a town called Luton Town, one of the most diverse towns in Europe. If you line up my best friends and the people I love, the majority of them are not white. Okay, so the accusation goes nowhere, it's pretty boring. But why did we face such an attack? Because I started talking about issues that our government have hid, they've conspired to hide, there's been a conspiracy of silence across our country. How many of you know about the grooming gangs of England? Let's call them what they are. It's a rape jihad being committed against people in Britain by Islamic members of the Islamic community. Again, I'm going to tell you, of course not all Muslims. Yeah? I've got Muslim friends who would hate them. I've got Muslim friends who would want to attack them. But the reality is there's a massive problem in their communities, and I started talking about it, so I faced relentless attack from the media, smears, lies. Say it. They are Islamic. I always speak the truth, I don't mix my words. They are Islamic rape gangs, and Muslims make up 5% of the UK population, but 90% of the convictions of men who rape children in gangs are Muslim men, 30% of them call Mohammed. Now this conversation is difficult for some, no, that's a fact, it's a fact. It's a fact. Now, you're not allowed to ask the question, why? If you ask the question, okay, why aren't the Hindus raping? Why aren't the Jews raping? Why aren't the Sikhs raping? Why is it the Muslim community who are raping their way through every country in Europe, not just Britain? Why is it? If you ask that question, you're an Islamophobe, you're an extremist, you're racist, you're far right. But do you know how frustrating it is? I'm standing here now in the last 2 years, I say there's been a mass awakening. Every time I get knocked down, I feel like I get picked up. 2 years ago, Elon Musk picked me up. I watched after October 7th, and do you know how frustrated I was watching Hamas take over my capital city? Do you know how frustrated I was, the voice that they were given? And then I was frustrated at the police's inability. And it was Armistice Day, which was our Remembrance Day, a sacred day for us. We've watched them desecrate our war memorials week in, week out. We've seen politicians do nothing about it. I'm in Spain, and I'm pretty defeated at that time. I'm invisible. I have no social media. Do you know how frustrating it is when you're censored, you're deleted, and you're doing the most important work you've ever done in your life, yeah? Now, the most important work I've ever done is making a documentary. If you haven't watched that documentary series, you really need to. It's a fascinating watch, it's a great watch, and the purpose of me doing it was to, if these men are not going to get charged, I'll give you a fact, like the city of Telford, I spent 12 to 18 months in Telford with my team. Where's Dave? I've got a friend here called Dave, Angus McNugget, who done some incredible work, and if I'm honest, I get the credit, but there's a whole team that worked with me. And we spent 12 to 18 months, and we sat girls down. And we sat them down for 3 hours, 4 hours, sometimes 2 times, sometimes 3 times. And we sat and listened to their stories. And then we built a database. So we got all these girls and we built a database of names. And when the Muslim men were named by 3 different girls who did not know each other, we went after those men. And I thought, right, I'm going to make sure the whole world knows who you are. And the police identified 200 rapists in the town of Telford. Do you know how many they prosecuted? They prosecuted 11. That means 189 men that the police know raped have never faced prosecution.
Shame.
Do you know how many victims there were just in the town of Telford? 1,000. 5 of them have been murdered. 5 of them are dead. This isn't a small town that no one's heard of. Telford. Do you know what the Muslim population is of Telford? 1.7%. There's only 3,500 Muslims. So you get the 3,500 Muslims, get rid of the women, get rid of the under 16s, there's 1,000 men. So out of the 1,000 men, the police identified 200 of them. That's 20% of the population. We identified 254. An independent inquiry identified over 300. That means that 20 to 30% of the men in that community were raping our kids. That's in a small town. I bet you've all heard of Rotherham, haven't you? Yes. Everyone's heard of Rotherham. There's only a 3.7% Muslim population in Rotherham. There's none there. 1,400 children raped in a 16-year period. There's no Muslims there. What do you think it's like in Luton with a 50% Pakistani Muslim population? What do you think it's like in Birmingham, that's now a Jew-free zone where Jewish football fans are not allowed to go? These people... We'll get onto that, we'll get onto that. But let me play you now, if you haven't seen the documentary series, it's the best work I've done, it's the most important work I've done. I'll show you a quick promo for that series now. But until they get the film ready, this was the most important work I've ever done. This is the reason I'm censored, this is the reason I'm deleted, this is the reason I face attack and relentless attack by the government. What has come out in every single independent inquiry is that the police knew it was happening, the government knew it was happening, but they all hid it. Why did they hide it? Because none of them wanted to be called a racist. That is the power of political correctness. Political correctness allowed a generation of our daughters to be raped. Political correctness and appeasement has just allowed the British government to recognise a terrorist state. It is the money from Qatar, it's the money from Iran, we have proxy armies, but the Jewish community now, do you know, in 2013, as I said, I'm from the town of Luton. In 2013, I sat down and I looked at the government projected growth forecast for the communities in Luton. Now, the Pakistani and Bangladeshi community wards were going to increase, this is by 2030, so in a 17-year period, they were going to increase by 70 to 77%. The white and black community by 1.2 to 1.4%. So the Labour Party know, and the Jewish community in London are now realising what I realised back then. We're irrelevant. We don't matter. White English in Luton, working class Luton, we don't matter. We don't gain them power. They get power through the local Islamic community. The local council of mosques, all the mosques come together under one voting block. That is how they get power. So 300,000 Jews in Britain, or the 5 or 6 million Muslims, the Labour Party are going to appease and surrender because all they actually care about is power. In our last election, 5 independent politicians were elected, right? As our whole last election was about Gaza. Our children are being raped in every town and city. There wasn't one mention of it. Nothing about the British, nothing about the working class, nothing really about the economy. It was all about Gaza. That is the power that they swayed already in Great Britain. Now, when the Labour Party lost a percentage of the Muslim vote that went to the independents, Keir Starmer's just tried to win that percentage back by recognising a Palestinian state. Unfortunately, Jews are realising what we realised. We're irrelevant, you're irrelevant to the Labour Party. Let's see if we got that next promo ready.
But what I do have
are a very particular set of skills. Skills I've acquired over a very long career. Skills that met me in my method like you. I will look for you. I will find you.
Stop fucking filming. Listen, simple question then, Dave. Did you rape her after I met no rape her?
Over 200 names were identified by your police investigation, but only 11 were charged. Why is that?
I've got to put some allegations to you. Young girls in restaurants, but
that's not right. Why would I go? Young girls named young children, multiple young girls, school children on camera, and multiple young girls who alleged you were involved in and they were prostituting.
We have serious allegations from children who say that you were involved in the rape and prostitution of them, that you were a kingpin having them trafficked. But I bet you didn't even see me, did you? I've got some questions to ask you about allegations of you raped a 12-year-old girl, you took her virginity in house next door to Mask in Telford.
Why would 3 individual girls who do not know each other all be telling me, giving me statements that you have been involved in their grooming, in their trafficking, and in their prostitution?
Can we talk? I've got some questions. We have accusations that you trafficked young children. You trafficked young children, you were the king, you chose who they... You chose who they were. You prostituted them. She thought you was, you dragged her knickers off her when she was 12 years old in the house next door to the mosque page.
Look at these guys, just make...
What were you doing hanging around with 13-year-old school children? You put on your car bonnet and you raced off because you were angry because you had been sleeping with your best friend girlfriend. Men in this town, Pakistani men in this town got away with destroying young girls' lives. Now, you're famous, everyone's going to know who you are.
Series is on one town. Those gangs are operating in every single town in Britain. People think about the crimes, no one thinks about the knock-on effect 10 years, 20 years later to the victims. I guess everything Israel's just been through. I hate to think of what the suffering that's going to go on for generations from those same attacks. These girls, 10 years later, 15 years later, hooked on drugs, suicidal, killing themselves, all of these effects. Do you know when we made this documentary series? They petrol bombed my car, they rang up and threatened to rape my daughters, they targeted my mum's house. Why has it took us to make these documentaries? Where are the mainstream media in going after these gangs? We are literally a handful, our team is a handful of people who have made these documentary series. I'm not just saying it, if you watch our documentaries, they're second to none. Yeah? We do proper investigative work. You will see a documentary come out of this trip to Israel. And we were including all the smears and lies that are being told about us by the mainstream media. But let me tell you where we're at as a country and what's happening in Great Britain, which I'm usually, everything I talk about is pretty depressing. It's usually very negative. But as I said, something huge is happening. Something that I believe currently will be looked upon as a cultural revolution in Great Britain. A time when the silent majority said they will be silent no more. What you saw on September 13th was millions of British patriots. And when I say millions of British patriots, you know, I walked through the market in Jerusalem and I was followed by young Jews. And do you know what they were chanting? God save the King. They were singing the British national anthem, okay? British patriots. So when I say British patriots, I'm not talking about certain religions. We had a vision of uniting the kingdom. And do you know what the most beneficial moment for me was as I stood at Trafalgar Square and looked at the diversity of the crowd? I knew that the media had lost. That no one's listening to them anymore. The smears are far right and racist. Every community has come together under our banner. Every community who loves Great Britain is welcome at our house. When my mum's Irish, okay? She's 4'11". Mum, if you're watching this, I love you. Dad, I love you too. Kids, I love you. My mum's 4'11", a mad little paddy, okay? Do not upset an Irish woman. Yeah? When I saw the migration crisis hitting Ireland, and this was at a time, it was, as I said, I was censored, I was deplatformed, I was in Spain, and I watched it, and I was inspired by the Irish. So I jumped on a plane. Why was I inspired by the Irish? Because Irish mothers were leading the revolt and the rebellion in the Republic of Ireland against mass immigration. And as I said, do not mess with an Irish mother. Now, I knew that. So I thought I'd better get over there and document for a documentary. I'll show you the promo and I'll talk more about the work and why it's relevant. Let me just show you this promo for our documentary in Ireland. Plantation 2, Rise of the Celts.
They're scared, Tommy. They're not only scared, they're petrified for their children.
I really don't feel safe for my kids or for my future.
Well, a lot of them are afraid. Like I know women that can't even go to work anymore, they won't walk because it's too fearful. Like, and that's a sad reality of Ireland today.
Yeah, I was attacked last year. I was in town.
There's 2 rapes by males, one in a local pub and one in this car park.
Another one.
They're literally grabbing you on the street. If they look at you and they like you,
all the attacks I know that have happened to friends of mine in town, nobody has been arrested.
Why did you think it acceptable that you wanted to rape a 14-year-old child?
I had been sexually assaulted while I was completely out cold. It just terrified me and it traumatized me. Like, I have PTSD, I have to deal with that.
This is my home, this is my country, this is my culture, and I won't sit back and say white them.
Let me tell you why this is relevant. I went to Republic of Ireland and I knew. I wore a covert camera, my button was a camera. And I went into the cities and towns that have been flooded with mass migration from Islamic nations, where the hotels, for example, Killarney, one of the most beautiful places. If you travel from Canada or America to the Republic of Ireland, you go to Killarney. And they've filled every hotel with Somalians, with Iraqis, with Syrians. So I went onto the streets and I wore a hidden camera. And I went up to women. I said, excuse me, I'm from England. Can I just ask her, what's it like here now compared to 2 years ago? And the women would say, we can't, you'll see it all on the documentary, we can't walk the streets. And one woman says, I work there, I live there, but my husband has to come here to pick me up, to walk me to there, because we're getting attacked, we're getting sexually assaulted. So I say, okay, I'm a journalist from the UK, let me just get my camera. And I would say, come over here. No, I can't say that on camera. And literally every woman I approached told the truth when they didn't know they were being recorded. And when I said, let me get a camera, they shit themselves, yeah? And then they backed down and said, we can't say that on camera. So I covertly recorded them in order for the public to be aware, this is how the women in Ireland feel. But they're too scared to tell the truth, yeah? Now what's changed in the last 20 months or 24 months in Great Britain? Because it was the same in Great Britain. You wouldn't have got women telling the truth. Now, women are outside every migrant hotel across our country and they're screaming the truth. They're no longer afraid to tell the truth. There is an army of mothers in Great Britain who have, I don't know if you've seen the Pink Ladies, yeah? This is it was easy to categorise us when we were organising demonstrations, probably because of the way I talk, the way I walk, because of my background and my education. It was easy to pigeonhole us. They can't pigeonhole us anymore, okay? It's mainstream. The British are awake, and what I want you to know as Israelis, and especially as Jews, when we say never again, when I say never again, I mean never again. And I'm not going to stand there, whether you were Jewish or whether you were Hindu. When the Hindus come under attack in Leicester, the first thing I've done was contact the Hindu community and say, we're with you. We're with you. We're not going to stand by. And that wasn't because the Indian government were paying me any money, okay? The same point, I don't get £7,000 a tweet. I wish I did, right? I wish I did. I'd probably be owed millions, yeah? But as I said, why do I come here? Why do I speak out? It's the right thing to do. Who are our allies? Our allies are those who defend Western civilization. Israel is the only country where Jews, Muslims and Christians are free to practice their religion. We hear the lie. There is a propaganda war going on that you're losing, okay? Your government are losing it, the Jews are losing it. It's funded by Qatar. Do you know Qatar used to, the way that Qatar used to, they spent nearly £1 billion radicalising Muslims in Europe. They have funded nearly £1 billion. They give home to the Muslim Brotherhood, they give home to Hamas. But the way they used to work is they used to work through dawah centres. They used to work through funding madrasas and funding mosques. Now, there's a new war. That's not how they reach the public. They reach the public with influencers. The conversions, whether it be the conversion of Andrew Tate or the conversion of Sneeko. What's his name? The Jew said steroid did. Dan Bizajan, is it? What's his name? Dan Bazarian. Okay? There's a picture of him on his social media reading the Quran. Right? Does anyone actually think he's reading the Quran? He probably got £1 million for that post, yeah? The point is that they have targeted influencers to influence them with propaganda. I know there's not a genocide. I know this is not an apartheid state. I know that Muslims in this country. The problem is, many of the public don't. And if you buy your media from the BBC and you listen to Channel 4 who are here today, then you're going to buy into the propaganda that just once you tell a lie 1,000 times, it becomes the truth. They keep just saying genocide, 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 genocide. What genocide? What genocide? So, as I said, I come here. I'll open up for a Q&A. I think someone's going to come up. But the message I wanted to bring was, Britain is awake. There is a mass awakening happening. There's an uprising happening. The silent majority will be silent no more. We organised an organisation called Unite the Kingdom. Our plan was to unite the kingdom. We had a plan 2 years ago. I think when you look at September 13th, we are doing pretty well. Okay? Now, I don't want to upset people by hearing this, but everything that's happened so far had to happen. Okay? It had to happen in order to wake people up. That doesn't mean I hate what's happened on October 7th. I watched the video, it broke my heart this week. But the public needed to see the response of governments. We all needed to watch what happened. Every one of us, I had to go to prison. I went to prison last year. I got an 18-month sentence for making a film. That had to happen. Lucy Connolly, a British mother, was locked up for 31 months for a tweet. That had to happen. We needed Keir Starmer in power so that people could see what happens under a Labour government. We needed to see the hatred. Why did we need to see it? Because we need the public to be awake. We need them to see it with their own eyes. So as I said, something huge is happening. We're going to hold our next event. Our next event is not just called Unite the Kingdom, it's called Unite the West. Why is it Unite the Kingdom? And I think your government, in what they're doing, at our last event, we reached out to all the populist parties of Europe and invited them in. Why did we invite them in? People come from all over the world. Why did we invite them in? It's not a British problem. It's not an Israeli problem. It's not a European problem. It's all of our problems, okay? And we are stronger working together. Anyone who defends Western civilization, free speech, equality, democracy, liberty, we need to unite together in the face of jihad. Again, Israel, I've absolutely been shown some love. I'm very grateful to be here. I look forward to my journalism, first and foremost. People say about politics. I don't want to be involved in politics. I like waking people up. I like making people think. One thing I will say is, you know the people who are against us? Many people in this room may have been against me at some time. My DMs are full of people apologising to me, saying I used to hate you. What we can't do, and I did it for a little while, is I was bitter when people who were opposed to me started saying the same thing as me. But then I realised that this is what we've wanted. We've wanted people to wake up. So to those groups and organisations, and maybe even some Jewish people who are criticising me now, at some point you will wake up, and our arms are open. We don't oppose you. We're not your enemy.
Thank you very much, Tommy.
Thank you.
You saw the energy.
thank the Israeli government who have invited... Do you know what? I'm used to be getting kicked out of countries, not invited to them. So, as I said, that's maybe part of the mass change. So I want to thank the Israeli government. I want to thank the Likud party who have hosted this event. I want to thank the Minister.
Well, Tommy, you now have an idea of what you do means to people here. We are in the midst of a surge of anti-Semitism worldwide, and people know that this fight that we're fighting is right. It's the right side of history, and they know that you are on the same side, and they look up to you, and they're right. And they're right. So it's hard to stop the energy here. It's like trying to stop a train with your hands. But I do want to change the tone slightly, because when we had a conversation yesterday, I realized it all started very personally for you. There was a niece or a second cousin in your family. Tell us briefly the story that you were 14 back then, and so was she.
I had a relative who was a victim of these rape gangs in my hometown of Luton. Do you know what's crazy is, do you know how many girls I went to school with who have been victims of these gangs? I don't think anyone quite understands the scale of the rape of Britain. That's why I called my series The Rape of Britain. And it was personal to me. And many of the things have been personal to me. Do you know, I gave a presentation. That interview that you saw earlier with Israel Shalom was a presentation at Oxford University. And I walked into Oxford University, there was a crowd, there was a large crowd. They hated me. They absolutely hated me. I was getting booed, I was getting hissed. When you go to Oxford University, it's one of the best debating chambers in the world. You go for a 3-course meal. I didn't get invited for any meal, okay? I went and I walked in and they hated me. And I stood up and told my story. And what I said to him is, I want you to think about where you live, but you don't live where I live. You haven't experienced what I've experienced. So I went through my life, and one of those things was the fact that my relative was raped, and she woke up being raped by loads of bearded Muslims, and she run naked as a child. She was then hooked on heroin. She would end up climbing out the window to get back to the Islamic rape. Yeah? What did the police do? Nothing. They labelled her a drug addict. She was a child. So this prostitution, this rape has gone on across our country, but all of these issues have been personal to me because I've grown up in a town plagued by these problems. And now, all the things I warned about 15 years ago, I didn't have a crystal ball. I just experienced it. And I knew that Luton was a blueprint for the rest of the country. So the problems that I saw in Luton, the whole country now sees. It's happening across our whole country. And all the things I talked about have been proven as factual. Where I remember sitting on TV and doing interviews with Jeremy Paxman, where they were looking at me with such contempt when I was trying to discuss these issues. And none of those videos have aged well for them. And they've aged well for us, and I don't take any satisfaction in that. I just wish that 10 years ago, or longer, that they would have listened. Because how many more girls could have been saved? We could have addressed these issues. We've been trying to highlight these problems.
As you were speaking, I got this text message from Amiad. Amiad is here. Jewish man arrested after his Star of David antagonized protesters. Is that something that happens in England? Do you understand what the issue was about? So a Jewish man was accused for wearing the Star of David because that antagonized other people.
So I tried to. Do you not remember the demonstration in London? Was it organised by Gideon or something? No, okay. Wait, and then that same gentleman. So I went to a demonstration in London, an anti-Semitism demonstration, and I went to report on it as a journalist. And when I turned up, the police come in and said, "You need to leave London." I said, "I'm here to do my job as a journalist, please. I'm here at work." And then as I went to leave, I was attacked by the police. I was pepper sprayed. I was arrested at the request of the organiser of the demonstration, apparently. Now, that same organiser of the demonstration didn't request that the far left groups, The Guardian, who continued the attack Israel, they didn't request that any of them were prevented. So, what the gentleman's making a point of, I believe that the police then told that Gideon a few weeks later, "You are visibly a Jew. You can't walk down here." Yeah? Now, how can it be provocative to walk the streets as a Jew. That's when we know we've got a problem. We spoke about the Tel Aviv football match, so I just want to make something clear about the Tel Aviv game as well. I wasn't calling for turning up with a mob of men. When I said I'll go to that game, if Jewish fans are allowed to go to that game, I will go as a journalist and I will document what it's like. Do you know what's insane is the media and the Muslim politicians are trying to blame the Israeli fans for what happened in Amsterdam, when there was an orchestrated and organised mass attack against Jews, a massive organised attack against Jews. But that is where they just totally twist the story. So again, I think what's happened recently is the Birmingham police have basically said that Jews are not safe in Birmingham, which we know anyway. I think most people know that.
We're going to take questions from the crowd. It's a very big crowd, so we ask anybody with a question who we point at should go to one of the aisles. We'll reach you with a microphone. State your name, where you're from, and a question, please. Not a speech, but I think the first question. Sheffy, do you have a question? If not, your second. Think about one, and we'll get with the microphone to you. There. Susie, here in the front line, please, with the microphone. Yes, Susie, please.
Thank you so much for coming. Susie from New York City. My question is, with the destruction of free speech in Britain and no right to bear arms, what do the British people have at their disposal to fight back?
Every move they've made, so you talk about free speech. Recently, I made a documentary. I was given an injunction not to show that documentary. And I was told I'll get a 2-year prison sentence if I did show that documentary. I released it. It got 167 million views. So last year, my imprisonment was meant to demoralise our support. Lucy Connolly, a mother, was locked up for 31 months. That was meant to put fear into the mothers of Britain. Peter Lynch, a grandfather, was locked up for a non-violent crime and he died in jail. All of the things the government have done to try and silence and put out the fire, instead of putting out the fire of the British public's heart, they have lit a fire in the hearts and bellies of every British person. Everything that's happening, so they can try and take speech. If they bring out a new Islamophobia law, I promise you I will break it very publicly the first day. Yeah? Because the only solution to their attacks on free speech is for us to exercise more free speech, regardless of the consequences. So, well, you're right, we don't have firearms. We don't, but do you know, I've said for years, I've watched for years and said, when the swing happens from left to right, when the people who have been whispering and silenced, when they finally start talking, when they feel free to talk, it's going to be one almighty scream. It's going to happen so quick, so fast, and none of us know what the defining moment of Europe will be. I've been waiting for it. It wasn't the Ariana Grande concert, 26 people bombed. It wasn't the synagogue attack. It wasn't the Westminster Bridge attack. It wasn't the Black Cam Theatre. Now, defining moments change the direction of a country. Bloody Sunday in Ireland changed the direction of that conflict. Something's going to happen in Europe. Something's going to happen, who knows? Maybe it'll be the first party that tries to enforce the law against the Islamic community with deportations. Who knows what it's going to be, but when that swing happens, it's going to happen so quick, so fast. I'm optimistic. I wasn't optimistic. With what I've seen, you have to remember, I have been in this 15 years. I walk the streets of every town and city, so I see how the public feel. I know there is a revolution brewing in Great Britain. The public are not taking it anymore. I know. I'm very confident.
Thank you.
Very confident.
Next, please, Sheffy Paz, and then Dr. Mordechai.
It's a female Tommy Robinson.
We met on Wednesday in South Tel Aviv. You saw the mass migration in Israel. And you know what struck me most was that you said again and again and again, it's the same thing. It's the same thing like at home, it's the same thing in Britain. And my question, I didn't have the time to ask you, how are we going to work together, all of us? All the anti-migration in Western Europe, because it's the same fight when we talk about it, it's the same fight for nationality, for freedom, for a sense of belonging, for identity. And we have no other choice but to take all the forces together and to work together. I'll talk with you about it later. But think about it. It's not me, it's not you, it's all of you, all of Western civilization.
I think that coming to Israel and finding a video and finding Jews within Tel Aviv who feel that mass migration is changing and affecting their culture, it's exactly the same as how we feel. But so many people who attack me would blame the Jews for the migration that's happening in Europe. So that's why coming here and meeting Jews in Tel Aviv who are being pushed out of their community by Eritreans and Sudanese, and your government have tried to tackle this. You've tried to challenge the judiciary, you've tried to challenge the Supreme Court. It's the same story in every country. When you say, how are we going to do it? As I said, we brought European politicians together. Our next event will be Unite the Kingdom, Unite the West. This problem affects all of us. I think your government have done a great job in reaching out to the parties, such as Santiago from Vox. I think that the future belongs to patriots, the future belongs to borders, the future belongs to strong leadership. And I think that your government and all the leading populist parties across Europe, I've watched for years and thought, well, there's a mass migration problem in Spain, and there's a mass migration problem in France and in Britain. Why are all these patriots in all these countries not united under one banner? Yeah? Which is what the goal of what we did at our last event. It's why we brought the political parties in the hope that when we do our next one, we can maybe see simultaneous demonstrations happening in capital cities across Europe to show that Europe, it's not just Europe, Israel, we hope, will be part of it. We hope that every Western nation will be part of it.
Before we move to Dr. Mordechai Kedar, who's going to be next, Tommy, let me ask you, what do we do against the rise of anti-Semitism on the right, on the anti-immigration right, against the Tucker Carlsons of the world? How are we going to face that?
I think that the Jews get banded together as one big group. Yeah? It's the Jews. That's what I hear. I think, well, I haven't met a bad Jew. Yeah? And I haven't met anyone that doesn't love Britain. I haven't met a non-patriotic Jew. So I think that what we've seen in my invitation here is a separation of some of the organisations which I feel give all Jews a bad name. Yeah? And they want open border mass immigration, but not because they're Jews, because they're leftists and because they're liberals. Yeah? So I think that the more you see those groups called out as not representative of the Jews or of British Jews, they have just given themselves the voice. We represent the Jews, we talk for the Jews. No, you don't. And I'm yet to find a Jew that you actually talk for.
They certainly don't talk for us. For those of you who don't know, the Board of Deputies in England came out. You're right. Came out against Minister Shikli for inviting Tommy Robertson. And you're asking yourself, whose side are you on? Do you understand where the danger is coming from? Do you understand?
The Board of Deputies are working alongside and in bed with many pro-Palestinian organisations who are marching along calling for the river to the sea. The Board of Deputies want to pass an Islamophobia law that would make it illegal to talk about the grooming gangs or even talk about October 7th. The Board of Deputies want a two-state solution. The Board of Deputies are in bed with the Labour Party who just recognised the Palestinian state. The Board of Deputies have sold out the Jewish community of Great Britain.
You know that? Absolutely.
But to the Board of Deputies, when you realise you're wrong, we'll still welcome you back into the fold. We don't hate you.
It is a predicament we face when organizations like J Street in America are calling for an embargo on weapons on us in the midst of a war. So this is a serious problem, and we have to face it. Dr. Mordechai Kedar, an Orientalist, is here in front.
Two things I missed in your excellent presentation. One is the role of the judicial system in Britain in all this picture, and second is the Qatari money, where this is influencing what happens in Britain.
The Qatari money, it's influencing universities, it's influencing politicians, it's influencing influencers, it's influencing everything. Qatar is influencing everything. I don't want a penny of Qatari money being allowed into Great Britain. I think our government needs to cut ties with them. I think they need to be recognised as a terrorist state that they are. They fund terrorism. The Muslim Brotherhood are a massive problem. And many of the Arab nations understand how to deal with this. The judicial system. I've experienced the judicial system. We don't, as you've all seen, we don't have a justice system. We have a legal system. And when they want to put a target on you, they will find something to nail you on. As I said, I've just faced a court case last week. Yeah? I have faced lawfare for 15 years, and I don't claim to stand here being anything other than I am. Yeah? I don't claim to be an angel. I'm a normal working class kid from Luton Town. I've made mistakes. Yeah? Who wouldn't make mistakes? When I was 25 years old, I owned 7 houses and I had 2 successful businesses. Within 6 months, I was leading the biggest street protest movement the country's seen. I have been taken on a whirlwind of an experience to understand media, to understand the police. So the country I thought I lived in, I very quickly realised I didn't live in. I thought I lived in the beacon of freedom and democracy. I thought we had free speech until I started exercising my free speech. So the judiciary, I faced prison on the 4th of November when I returned to the UK. The difference is the monopoly and the power that the media had. If they send me to jail, it benefits us now. Yeah? More people will wake up and see that there is no justice in the system, that it is corrupt. And we all need, I saw the leader of El Salvador said, unless we sort out the mafia of the judiciary, none of us are going to save our countries. And I think your country's going through that, right? You're trying to tackle the judiciary. And you're trying to tackle the judiciary.
Question from the other side, gentlemen. The gentleman there, please tell us who you are, where you come from, and a question.
All right. First of all, nice to meet you. It's been a long time coming. Thank you for being here. My name is Robbie. I'm originally from Edgware, London. I moved here 10 years ago.
Welcome.
My question really is, obviously everyone's calling for an election. No one really knows if that's going to happen, like in the UK. Do you think there's actually a chance that there will be a leadership in the UK that will actually protect the Jews? Because this leadership right now, we saw the Manchester bombing, the shooting at the synagogue, and there were Palestinian protests actually hours later, and nothing was done.
I'll be honest.
Jay, stay there.
Yeah. No, I'll be honest. I think we need Keir Starmer, and I think we need him for another 3 years. Because I think, I'm sorry, I do, because I think the problem has to get that bad, and the public have to see it, that when we want a government to enforce real change, the public are ready for that change. Unfortunately, I think Reform will win in the next election. I'll be honest, I don't think Nigel Farage is going to be that great friend of Israel. I think Nigel Farage, he's the best we have. But I think that we have to push Nigel Farage. I think that Advance UK, which is a new political party, I think that public opinion, as I said, outside of politics, Nigel will go which way the wind flows. Yeah? If 3 million people turn up to our next event, and you see the Star of David, and you see discussions around Israel, and you see every other community and country coming together, it will push them. Because I'm sorry, but I think Nigel Farage made a comment, and I don't want to get into a slagging match here, but Nigel made a comment in an interview where he said by 2050, the Islamic community is going to be that strong in the UK, we can't alienate them. Now, how do you not alienate the Islamic community? You're going to have to throw the Jews under the bus. Yeah? You're going to have to not stand up. So, unfortunately, if you've got a leader, Reform will win the election, I think, yeah? If you've got a leader who's already putting up the white flag to a hostile community, then it doesn't bear much hope. So I don't bear much hope in Nigel Farage unless he's pushed and forced by public opinion. I just think that, I'd be, you know Jews say they're worried. I understand you're worried. So are we. Everyone's worried. Non-Jews are worried. Everyone's worried. Our daughters are getting raped in every town and city up and down the country. Yeah? No one wants to talk about it. So I just think that, I think Jews need to understand they're not alone. And I think that more outreach, which your government have done here and are continuing to do across Europe, is the most important thing. And a united front against all of it, where Jews realise that you're not isolated as a Jewish community, you're a British community, and there's many that stand with you. But yeah, the future ain't good.
Daniela, say who you are, where you're from, and a question, not a speech.
I'm Danielle from Israel, and I want to ask you something. I lived through the second Intifada in Israel, and I've been to multiple suicide bombings. So when I hear someone promoting the chant, globalize the Intifada, I know exactly what it means. The question is, how do we actually tackle this subject and explain to people that it's not a spiritual journey, it's actually a call for a genocide and murder of all people, and not just the Jews in Israel.
First Saturday, then Sunday, as you say, Tommy.
Yeah, as we say, first Saturday and Sunday, which is what I think my job is to let the British public know that, which is what I say, in my view, if Israel falls, we fall. Yeah? Do we actually think, I say to people, do you actually think that if all these surrounding jihadi groups, the Houthis, the Hezbollah, Hamas, say they were successful and they pillaged their way through this country and take control of it, do you actually think they're stopping there? Does anyone actually really think that these organisations, if anyone understands how they think, they want a global caliphate? They're not bothered about Israel, they want New York, they want London, they want everywhere, yeah? They want everywhere. So how do we stop it? When you talk about how we stop it, by becoming the media. Because unfortunately, it's just education. It's literally awakening the public and making them understand what's happening. How do we do that when we haven't, as I said, we haven't had control? We have a phrase now in the UK where we all join together saying, we are the media, yeah? As I said, the mainstream media, if there are any here today, no one's listening to you anymore, really, yeah? But it's about building, we're trying to build a media brand. As I said, you've seen these documentaries. These documentaries should be watched by 10, 20, 30, 40 million people, yeah? That's what needs to happen. That's what needs to happen.
Let's take one more question on this side and one more question on this side, and then Tommy, you still got another event for the VIP.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
I know that. All right.
Question over here.
Yeah, gentlemen, please introduce yourself, mister.
Yeah,
introduce
Josh
yourself.
from here in Israel. Absolute honor talking to you, Tommy. My question to you is, how much longer does just talking work? Where we're combating violence with just talking, when is it going to get to the breaking point where Britain doesn't have any other options? And how would you combat that? By taking the higher road?
We need to win the hearts. I get what you're saying, but our job is to win the hearts and minds of the public. Yeah? You're not going to win the hearts and minds of the public by throwing bricks and smashing bottles. And I understand that. Yeah? We want people to listen to us, to understand us. And I think, as I said, we've got a vision. We've got a goal. I think we're working on it. And we're waking the public up. And when the public are awake, politicians shift. They're cowards. You see the Labour Party conference, they're all waving the Union Jack. Every single politician is now talking about being a patriot. Yeah? We're patriots because they can see the swing in public opinion. I personally think that all we have to do is wake the country up. You can see the swing across Europe. You can see the voting patterns. You can see that the future of Europe belongs to, whether it be Vox, whether it be Gert. Do you know Gert Wilders? When I started my acting, I love Gert Wilders.
Jane, take this gentleman in the white shirt there, and that would be the last, and we're sorry that we can't tell to everyone. It's a long night. Yeah, give that gentleman with the kippah. Yeah.
Hi there, Tommy. Thank you for coming to Israel. I was born in London and came to Israel. Avraham J, pleased to meet you in person. Question, why do you think, because it's so illogical to me how we got in this situation in the first place. What is the agenda of, you call the globalists, the leftists, the communists, why would they be pushing so hard for this failed diversity project that is endangering so many people, losing the identity of Britain, losing the identity, making Jews feel so unsafe and so on? What's the driving force behind that?
Digital ID and control. You've seen that the Labour Party have come out to deal with the migrant crisis. They're going to introduce digital ID to deal with, which is going to enslave all of us. I think that it's not a fluke and it's not a mistake what's happening. Every single Western nation, and we now know Israel is one of them, is being flooded with migration, which is affecting all of us. It's affecting our security, our stability, and it's affecting our culture. Yeah? And if you weaken someone's culture, you weaken their country, you weaken the men you're not going to face the resistance that you would. You weaken the family and you break the family. You control the next generation of kids. And I think that what was a conspiracy theory, every conspiracy theory seems to be coming true, right? So I just think that total control is what they're looking for.
Take back the culture!
Look at what the United Nations say about Israel. Yeah, look, United Nations are a massive problem. United Nations, and I think that at some point people are going to have to decide what future they want for their country. And at some point you're not going to be able... Do you know in 2009 when I started the English Defence League, as I said, I had 7 houses and I had 2 businesses. I could have moved, yeah? Which most people just move. Move away from the problem, I'm all right, I'm fine. When do you stop moving? You're going to end up on the beach, yeah? At some point you have to stop running away from this problem and confront it. And right now I think we're at a point where Britain is ready to confront it. The public are ready to listen. We had the English Defence League, we tried to start a European Defence League. Europe wasn't ready. Gert Wilders has gone from here to here, yeah? The Swedish Democrats, when I started, were on 1.5% of the vote, they're now on 22%. As I said, it's encouraging if you look at the voting patterns of Europe, and I'm encouraged, I can just say personally, I know that the British public are awake and the country is ready for real change.
Tommy Robinson, thank you very much for your stay.
Again, I'm very grateful for the love I've been shown, and just keep fighting, keep fighting. Thank you for the support, everyone. Stop the hate, stop the hate.
Thank you, Gotti. Thank you, everyone. Laila Tov.
Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io.